Welcome to Who Knows Real Estate, Episode 3, Scaling Up Your Residential Portfolio. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Jim. What an incredible episode with our guest today, Tom Cruz, who scaled from 0 to 259 houses in 7 years. Tom shares exactly what he looks for in deals, how he finances them, how he scaled his portfolio, why he works with subsidized housing, and if you stick around after the fire round, he dives deep into creative lease terms and how he lowers his maintenance cost. Here it is. Today we have Tom Cruz, who's a local real estate investor in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Tom, would you mind giving us a quick background, where you're at now and how you got there?
Yeah, no problem. My name's Tom. I am originally from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is about 2 hours from Wilmington. I've been investing in real estate real seriously full time for about 3 years, but I bought my first unit about 7 years ago. Currently, I have 259 units, mostly single family. We have duplexes, triplexes. We have just a combination of a lot of different types of assets, and we focus on low income. Most of what we're buying is between $50,000 and $130,000 in price. We don't do any flips. We're just buy and hold. And yeah, that's essentially in a nutshell kind of our model.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great overview. What'd you do before you got into real estate?
Yeah, so I've had a few different companies. I had a marketing company, which I still have. We just kind of maintain that. And then I had a software company, which we just did e-commerce marketing platform that we had set up for that. And going way back, I sold paintball guns online in high school. So that's where I kind of got to start to cover my habit.
Yeah. So how'd you get started in real estate? It sounded like did you get started in like low income or what'd that look like?
I bought my first property to live in. So I bought a condo back in, I think it was 2011, and, got it for a really good price because it was still kind of recession, after '08. Lived in it for a couple of years and then decided I wanted a single family house. I was upside down on mine because back then I bought it, with 3% down and a $10,000 Obama tax credit. So I wasn't in the best shape with it. So I just decided to rent it and was pretty shocked with how fast and, how much money I was making renting one unit, making a few $100s a month. I just decided to take a lot of the money that I was making from my marketing company and keep buying more condos.
Yeah. And how many condos did you buy did you keep buying condos or did you switch over to single family?
It took me like 6 condos before I realized I was an idiot and started buying single families.
Yeah.
And it all hit me when we had an assessment for like $3,000 on one of the condos. And I was just so mad because I had 3 condos in the complex. So I had,
like a $20,000 bill a foot.
It was pretty steep. And then they just arbitrarily every year increase HOAs and COAs. And it's just a joke, Right. So unless you own the entire complex and you own the HOA, there's no point in buying a condo like that.
Yeah, you're always at the mercy of the lowest price seller too. I mean, I've dabbled in that, and it's like you can try and make your condo as sweet and as beautiful as you want, but you get one character in there that wants to unload it, and that has a real consequence on the rest of the prices.
Yeah, I mean, one bad comp, and then everyone uses that as the benchmark. So that's true.
What about the scaling up? So you talked about you started in the condos. How did you scale it up to the 259 units you're at right now?
I went from the condos, and then I decided to go real conservative into single family, meaning I was just buying, one a month at the most that I could afford, which was at that time about I was buying $150,000 rental single families, which now I look back at and just realize how ridiculous that was. But yeah, by the time I would buy $150,000 units, I would then put, a nice middle class tenant in there. It'd be $1,300 to $1,400 a month, and just cash flow on that, and then save up for another, $30,000 down payment, and then rinse and repeat. And then it really kind of took my agent just saying, "Hey, look, man, you can get the same rents on a house that costs a third the price." And I really didn't believe him until I went out there. I went downtown, in a pretty rough area. And I was like, well, look, if I want to test this out, I'm going to go as low end as I can possibly find. And sure enough, I found a $48,000 unit on Gores Row in Wilmington, North Carolina. You can go look it up. If you actually Google it, there's been 3 murders on that road. That's how I knew I was in the right place. So I bought it. I even financed it. I didn't even pay cash for it. I put 10 grand down on it, financed 38 grand. I had a mortgage payment of $210 a month on a 20-year AM. And day one, I put a $1,300 a month tenant in there from Section 8. And that's when I was hooked. Yeah.
And you got that for $38,000?
No, it was, it was 40 something.
Okay.
Yeah, 48.
How much work did that property need, or was it ready to rent?
It was ready to rent for most people, but I wanted to rent it really fast. So I probably put 3 grand in flooring and painting in there. I think I was all in with all the other stuff that came in. I was probably in 54, 55 grand, the whole thing. By the time I did the repairs, and then, there was some other exterior stuff that I needed to do as well. But yeah, it was pretty straightforward.
Do you still own it?
I do. I'm selling it right now, actually. Only reason because we're 1031 exchanging into a bigger one, but it's a 208 Gores Row. You can go check that one out.
What's the current rent?
It is vacant because the last tenant moved out, and then it just makes it a lot easier to sell. Right now we're selling it for 75 grand.
Was it still Section 8 when your last tenant was in there?
No, it was private.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. The private lease on it we were renting it for $1,200, so we took a little bit of a hit, but it's a lot less headache dealing with Section 8 when you're dealing with private.
So like you mentioned, as you're scaling up, you went from condos to like middle-class single-family houses, and then you discovered subsidized housing. Is that what helped you accelerate to, hundreds of units, or what really helped change that?
Yeah. So to kind of understand that, it went from when I hit probably 12 to 15 units that I was self-funding with my own businesses, and then around 15 units, if you're figuring on average $1,000 per rent, on the low end, I was grossing 15,000. Figure I was netting about, half of that. So every 2 or 3 months, I had enough for a down payment on a unit. So I was buying 6 or 7 a year, back in 2015, 2016. And then when I had about 20 units, that's when I started talking to partners, just organically. It just started. People kind of saw what I was doing. My name kept popping up every time someone was downtown. They came to me looking for it. I would go to investor meetups. I'm a big, car guy, so I would go to Cars and Coffee and talk to other, people that were looking to get into real estate. And I just find that no matter who you talk to, the second you tell them that you're, doing investment properties or rentals, they're always like, oh, I've always wanted to do that, but I just don't know how.
Yeah.
So how I started working with that is I would say, hey, man, you got $500,000. I have these 20 properties. I have, already these really good relationships with local banks. I can go ahead and get us financing on these 20 units. You put the cash down. I bring the financing. I already have management. I already have, contractors. I have everything in place. We'll split the equity. We'll split the cash flow. And, we'll set up in our own LLC. We'll both, own half of it. And people, just love that model. And then I did it for friends. I have probably 3 or 4 friends that each wanted to buy 5 or 6 units that I've done, that way as well. And most of those, 250 some units came from one deal. I partnered up with my best friend's dad, and we bought 106 units. Well, it was 103 units, but there were some lots and stuff in there. So, almost half of my total portfolio came from one deal, and that was $6.3 million that we did about 6 months ago. But yeah, just through partnerships. We got really creative. Sometimes I would bring cash to the table because I didn't want to have, any more, debt on my name. And my friend would finance it. He would have the ability to do that, because when you're doing your first 10 deals, there's 10 financed units, you can get best financing until Fannie Mae caps you. So, anybody that can do a 30-year fixed mortgage at 4.5%, escrowed all in, we were just, the cash flow is ridiculous because it's amortized for 30 years. Now all the terms that I'm doing are 5-10-year balloons on maybe a 25-year AM. So I have a higher payment. So
you were actually like finding friends or other people you knew who might only own 1 house or 0 houses, and you could get 10 conventional loans in their name. You manage it, you find the property, you do everything, and then you just split the cash flow.
Exactly. And
that's a great model.
I just had a standard operating agreement that we would do with them. They simply just said, hey, look, if we can sell for this amount, we will. If we can't, we'll just keep it. And most of the people that I was dealing with didn't need the money. That's the best case scenario, because then you don't have that pressure of, oh my God, I have to rent this in 30 days. They can take a 2 or 3 month hit with, mortgage coming out of both our pockets. So But yeah, that's essentially the way I did it. And then I've also partnered up where we did commercial loans as well. And the 100 and some unit that we just did, we're both on the note there. So,
Got
but
it.
yeah.
No, that's awesome. I love that tip of finding other people to partner with who either have money or able to get financing. And that's a great way. Did you ever, once you hit 10 conventional loans, did you ever try to repackage some of those into like a commercial loan so that you can go get a few more conventional loans yourself first, or do you just jump straight into partnering?
I did try doing that. A lot of them, the thing that I like about my first 10 units is that I don't ever have to worry about a 5-year balloon being called. It's a 30-year fix. It just said that I'm always going to have, it's always going to be kind of like, if everything else goes to shit, then, I always have my 10 that are going to be there for the 30-year fix. So I never really wanted to get out of that into a commercial product. It's kind of a pain in the, neck that I have to deal with as 10 units because I have 10 separate mortgages in 10 separate banks, a lot of them, well, not 10 separate banks, probably 5 separate banks, but at the beginning, a lot of them weren't willing to give me, 5 or 6 loans. They were giving like, we'll give you 2, don't mess it up kind of deal. So
what's your advice for investors who might have hit their 10 conventional loan cap and they've got friends who are interested in getting into investment properties? What's your advice for them on how to structure that deal and some of the lessons you learned in doing that with a couple of different people?
Yeah, so once you hit the 10 financed mortgage cap, I would look at small community banks that have their own in-house portfolio products. There's a lot of time, I've done probably 4 or 5 deals where they're not commercial loans. They're, simply 30-year conventional, but the paper is being held by the bank. They don't sell it to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. So that way they're not bound by the same compliance restrictions that Fannie Mae has. And as far as how I structured it, it was the same way. I would ask them for the cash. So, if I've already gotten, 10 units, depending on how your cash flow is, you may have already kind of, exhausted a lot of your own money. So that's kind of a good way to say. And also I found that when you get to 10 units, that's way more than the average investor has. So when you start going to other investors and saying, hey man, I got 10 units, I'm making $6,000 a month and I know what I'm doing, they're a lot more apt to say, hey, I want to jump in this as well with you. And I trust that you know what you're doing because, here's your balance sheet, here's the profit and loss. And by that time, you have relationships with banks, you have relationships with Section 8, you have relationships with agents, brokers, contractors.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I found where the tipping point was with getting trust from third parties that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And are you, just to clarify, are you self-managing or do you use a third-party property management company?
I have my own property manager, so it's all in-house. Reason being is we have a lot of policies that, a lot of property management companies just wouldn't want to do, as far as we're really, really hardcore on evictions. We know there's just no leniency or flexibility, and we don't want to wait until the 10th or the 15th for them to pay out their money. We're aggressive on collections. It's just going to be just kind of our way. So that's the only reason why I did it in-house. It's probably more expensive to do it that way, but we know predictably, when all the cash is coming in and dealing with all the different subsidized organizations that we're dealing with. So yeah.
Yeah. And lastly, like before we switch over, when you're doing these partnership deals 50-50 with a guy who's got the financing ability you're looking for, are you splitting true cash flow? Are you splitting everything above like PITI? Or are you including property management? Like what is that split of what you guys, write checks out at the end of the day?
Yeah. So the way that we do it is we obviously pay the bank, the principal, interest, tax, and insurance first. After that, which I'm managing every single time, I just charge an 8% flat property management fee, even if they only did 5 deals with 5 houses with me. So I still charge that. And then after that, then we split the cash flow and we split the expenses.
Everything after expenses. Yeah. Are you putting anything to side for like CapEx or vacancies into an account or?
Yeah. So right now, the way that we do it, we only take draws every quarter. So depending on how well we did after expenses at that quarter, we'll then just set aside whatever we think is going to need. Gotcha. It just depends on the unit. If we know the unit's already got a 20-year-old roof, we know the roof's going to be $4,000. So we're going to say, hey, look, let's just take $2,000 out of this month. And the next quarter, we'll take another $2,000 and replace the roof.
Yeah.
So I don't have a fixed number. It's just completely based on the unit, the deal, and what we're doing.
No, I love that. I think a lot of people get too stuck in a way of picking a specific percentage when really it depends on the property and, each item that actually has to be expensed. as the capital expense.
And then we also force a lot of times the sellers to give us a 3-year home warranty. So we're not paying a lot of the big stuff.
No way.
Yeah. So it's just like the 5, 10 or whatever the big warranty company is.
Yeah.
We just say, hey, look, we're going to buy the house as is, but we want a 3-year warranty on it. And they pay the $2,000 to $1,800 for a 3-year warranty.
How's the follow-up from the warranty company? I've had a couple of them and I kind of gave up on them because sometimes they just didn't want to cover anything.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of times it's a joke, but where we really win with it is we know that the HVAC is going to go out, but it was good enough to pass the initial warranty inspection, but it's just at the end of its service life. So what they'll do is they'll just buy you out of the warranty, but we didn't pay for the warranty, so we still get the $2,000.
That's great money.
Yeah, so when you do that over 150, 200 units, that adds up really fast. So we're actually pretty pumped when they don't want to cover it because then they just send us a check back for the amount that was paid on it.
Okay, brilliant. I love it. We already talked a little bit about market rate versus subsidized rentals, Section 8. What do you feel currently and in the past? I've had maybe 20, 30 Section 8 properties. I don't have any currently, but I've always felt like there's a trailing effect on the Section 8 rent versus the market rent.
I mean, it's completely dependent on the market. Here, they're above market rent, in my opinion. A lot of people just go by the fair market value. So when they go to put down on Section 8 on the form what they want to pay or what the rent is, they'll put $950 just because that's what they expect for the rent to be. But I learned really fast and completely by accident that we bought a property. It had a tenant in there, and it was a Section 8 tenant. And I just never asked the rent, before I bought it. It was just one of those deals where I think we were buying like 3 or 4 at a time, and it kind of fell through the cracks. So when we closed on it, the guy was like, "Oh yeah, they're paying $1,300 a month," and I was like, "Wait, what?" Yeah, they're paying $1,300 a month. So that, and combined with the original one I did on Gore's Row, where they were in that $1,300 range as well. The only reason I thought the initial one was because I thought they were disabled. So I thought that was like an exception. But then when I saw, this other family just getting I think it was $1,325 on this one unit, that's kind of where I was like, okay, we need to be doing more of that. So as far as the headaches, though, there's definitely a lot of headaches, especially with our local one. It's just, they're understaffed, I think, is a big part of it. Half the time we get our payments on the 5th, 6th, 7th of the month. It's actually, our private tenants pay a lot of times faster than Section 8. It may be more structured and organized in Mecklenburg County, where I'm sure it's obviously a much bigger housing authority, but we've had issues with that. They only have one inspector for the whole county, so sometimes it could take a couple weeks to even get an inspection. If they fail the inspection, for something stupid, then you're waiting another week. So
Right.
You have all the annual inspections, which if you have, 10, 15, 20, it's not a huge deal because it's broken down over, 12 months. But once you start scaling and you have inspections every month or every week, that's when it becomes like a massive headache because they nitpick, like crazy. So really where we've been winning really hard on the subsidized is with ministries and charities and Salvation Army, because they pay the same as Section 8, if not more, and they have half the scrutiny that we have with Section 8. So, yeah.
What advice do you have for investors who may be afraid to rent a Section 8 because they've heard the horror story from a friend of a friend? What advice do you have to them for people who are like afraid of it?
I would say that you just have to try it and see how it is in your area. We still screen them like a private, tenant. So as long as they pass all the regular checks, then in that case, it's the same risk that you're going to have with a private tenant. I think where a lot of people completely mess themselves up is thinking that Section 8's already pre-screened them and pre-checked everything.
Right.
They credit check. They don't. All they check to see if they're a convicted felon. If they pass that very, very low benchmark, then they get a voucher. But no, I mean, we have Section 8 tenants that take care of their houses better than I take care of my primary residence. So it can really be a really good thing. And it's, it is guaranteed depending if you make sure you pass your inspections, and they don't want to lose their voucher. If they destroy your house, if they don't pay their portion, then you simply call up their Section 8 counselor and say, hey, look, person X didn't pay. And they call them, and then you get a call next day with like, hey, I got my credit card ready. I was like, okay, cool. So,
yeah, I had a conversation with a guy like that today. Actually, we were talking about tenants wanting to get, once their lease is up, and if you don't release them, give them the blessing that the property was left to you in a good condition, then you can really screw them up on their future Section 8 rentals. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's what we do as well, to make sure that the units are left in decent shape.
Yeah. What are some of the top lessons you've learned over the last 7 or so years investing in real estate, whether it's with screening tenants or buying properties? Like, what do you think some of the top lessons you've learned are?
Top lesson was definitely is really find your niche locally. I think it's going to change everywhere. We found our niche and really hit our stride when we figured that we're not buying anything over 80 grand. We're not buying anything outside of downtown because we see a lot of growth there. And then as far as screening, just get a process. We use myrentals.com for screening, and that works really well. The tenant pays the $29. We get their full credit report and background check and eviction history. Just force everyone through that. And then, just processes. We have documented process for everything that we do. As far as, do you say how or yeah?
No, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. That was it. Was just coming up with processes for evictions, process for notices, processes for software, and not jumping around software to software, which we did a lot at the beginning. But yeah, that would be the biggest, I would say, takeaway. Oh, and just don't trust any tenants whatsoever for any reason.
Yeah.
I don't care if it was my mom. I wouldn't trust them.
Assume the opposite of what they tell you.
Yeah, every single time.
You already mentioned like an 80K price point for your rentals. What else do you look for in a rental property as far as underwriting or basic evaluations?
Yeah, so with subsidized housing, location's not really a factor at all. We're not in it for the appreciation or the flip, so we really don't care about where it's located. As I said, I bought one on, literally it's called, Murder Row. So we're in it for the cash flow. As far as what I'm looking for, we really target 3 bedrooms. They're all historic 80, 90-year-old homes, so we already know that it's going to be a 3-1 or a 2-1. Very rarely do we get a 3-2 or a 2-2. We are looking for roof and HVAC. If we go there and it's all window units and it's got a 30-year-old roof, we're going to make them replace it or give us a huge, discount on it, and that's going to be the first thing we change out, because most of the headache is going to come from the roof and heating and air. Everything else is kind of secondary. If you have a roof, 3-tab shingles on your roofs, it's going to leak, it's going to get in the drywall, ceilings are going to collapse, insulation is going to fall, you're going to have tenants calling you about mold. It's just not worth it. Heating and air, every single time the season changes, you're spending $1,000 on a compressor, a motor, or Freon. So those are the two that we look at quick. And then after that, it's just really size. We don't buy big houses, even if we can, it fits in that $80,000 model. I really don't like the 1,800 square foot, 4 bedrooms, 2 stories, which are out there for that price. You get more out of Section 8, but it's just exponentially more work and maintenance when you get to 2 stories. And we really are sweet spot. Our perfect house that I'll buy without even looking, which I do all the time, is 3 bedroom, 1 bath, 1,000 square feet, vinyl siding, architectural shingle roof, and a Carrier, Train, or Goodman unit outside. Yeah, that's kind of what we look for.
That was an awesome answer. I appreciate the detail you went into that.
Yeah, that 2-story. I never thought about the 2-story aspect of it.
Yeah, the reason why I say that is, and like I said, every market's different. I mean, a lot of markets you can't even buy a double wide trailer for 80 grand, but like here, you can buy a 2-story house, but then you're dealing with the infrastructure of the second floor. A lot of it could be rotted. There's liability risks. A lot of times the stairs are shot going to the second floor. When the roof leaks, it not only goes to the top, it starts rotting everything underneath it. So we just really avoid that at all costs.
That's awesome to know. I was actually looking at a 4-1 outside of Charlotte last week, $70,000, and the Section 8 rent on it was, about $1,550 a month.
Yeah.
But it was 2 stories, so.
Yeah.
And
you'll get that. They pay the same thing here. You're going to get a much higher rent out of it. But what you don't take into consideration is when you do a 4 unit bedroom house, you're going to be renting to a family with 6 or 7 people.
Right.
Yeah. And the amount of wear and tear that 6 or 7 people put on a house like that, it's just, you're going to be spending, you're going to be putting new floors, new paint, new everything by the time they walk out. So you have to kind of factor that in as well.
Yeah.
That's why I like the 2s, and, I love the 3s, but sometimes the 2s are nice as well because we can get a couple $100 less per month, but it's 9 times out of 10, like 2 roommates or a couple, and, they're at work all day and they live, they just sleep there, and it's next to no wear and tear when they leave.
Yeah, you can assume in a Section 8 that if you've got a 4 bedroom, you're going to have at least 8 people living in that thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I found out a law too once I moved to North Carolina that, and the Section 8 I believe enforces it, if kids are over a certain age, you can't have a boy and a girl living in the same room. I never knew that before I got into Section 8.
Yeah, they do. And then like also they can't like stay with their parents if they're over a certain age as well. They have all sorts of like, contingencies and conditions on it.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned before about some of the ways you finance properties, whether it's using partnerships or conventional loans and local banks. Are there any other ways you finance properties? Like, are you doing commercial loans on obviously the larger portfolios?
Yeah. So if I'm not doing a partnership and they're already having a conventional 30-year fixed, then yeah, I'm doing most of the time it's going to be a 20-year AM, 5.5% on a 5-year balloon is like a typical loan that I'm doing right now. I've worked it out with most of the banks that I deal with where they don't have a minimum. A lot of times I'll have like a $50,000 loan minimum, but I just do so much volume with them that it just kind of makes up for it. And that's why it's really important. That's probably like the most important part of this whole financing piece is building the relationship with the banker. Only going to small local banks. I mean, I'm actually next week going to lunch with one of my bankers, and then they bring out the spreadsheet and we go over all the properties and what I'm doing, and it's funny because most of their investors aren't dealing with the kind of properties that I am. Right. So when they're seeing the cap rates that I'm getting, like he doesn't believe me. I have to like show him bank statements. So he's like, "There's no way you're getting $1,350 on a $60,000 3-bedroom." I'm like, I mean, here's the HUD and here's the HAP contract from Section 8. So I don't know what to tell you, man.
And here's the other 200 that I'm also doing it on, right?
Yeah. But once you have that relationship, you can get a lot more creative, because a lot of times they're going to try to offer you that 15-year amortization with a crazy high payment. But if you tell them, hey, look, I'm buying 5 more this quarter, let me get a 20-year AM, they're flexible with that. So that's really I have probably 4 bankers like that I can call right now and just send them a contract blindly. And then, hey, man, I'll see you in 30 days when we close this thing. And they're like, all right.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't want to bounce around from bank to bank or using the big banks that really don't care, if you come or go. These guys are actually committed to, getting you somewhere.
Yeah. What advice do you have for newer investors or people who aren't past their 10 units on building those relationships with the bankers and how to find the small ones? You just, call them up or walk through the door. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, the way that I did it was I just called them. I literally just searched Bloomington community banks and just, spoke to the commercial lending vice president, usually their title, or vice president of commercial lending is most of the time what their title is. And then just told them, hey, look, I have everything you're gonna be looking for. I have my W-2s. I have, excellent credit. I have, the 25% down payment. I want to buy this many units this quarter or this year. How many will you allow me to buy? And then, I would try to set up an appointment and, go and talk to them.
Perfect. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's what people need to do and not just go to like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, get declined.
No, you won't get anywhere.
Like, this doesn't work. Can't do it this way.
Yeah, commercial banks are just nice too because once you start working with them, the first time, you got to go give them literally everything they ask for, 3 years of everything, including like your blood sample. But once you get in a rhythm with them, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll close that for you in 30 days.
Well, that's the other thing is with commercial loans, they're underwriting the asset and not really as much you. I would say a couple of the banks, they didn't even ask for W-2s. They just asked for bank statement, just seeing that I had the reserves to cover it. And they asked for the rent roll and they asked for the leases. And that was it. And they obviously had to check my credit. But some of those banks, I didn't even provide any financials about myself. So that's really important because when you're dealing with those commercial loans, it's a riskier loan because you have to refinance it in 5 years, but it's a lot more contingent on what you're buying and how much money it's making versus, how much money you make.
Right. You kind of mentioned earlier your screening process with the website you use that checks their credit and whatnot. Do you have any other screenings that you go through for your tenants?
We just manually go check the sex offender list. We search for NC offenders, which is just convicted felons, and it does female and male, and we just see if they've ever been an inmate in North Carolina prison. But myrental.com really shows everything. We just use it to double check. It does eviction lookup, it does multi-state criminal check, and a bunch of other things. And as far as what we're doing for screening, majority of the people that are renting for low income have bad credit. There's just no way around it.
Right.
It's almost a standard. Occasionally, you'll find the unicorn that's got like a 720 credit score, and it's just it's a magical thing, but it very rarely happens. It's usually a 525 credit score, and student loans, Verizon, and U.S. auto loans. So what we look for with that is collections that have been paid off. If they have a ton of outstanding collections, it means that they just don't care.
Right.
And they're going to do the same thing to you. Because I've gone back and looked at eviction histories, and then I went back and looked at the credit reports to see if there was a trend, and it's absolutely a trend. If they have outstanding collection balances, they're going to shaft you. But a lot of times, the exceptions that we'll do is just medical. A lot of people just don't have health insurance, and they go and end up, sick and have a $50,000 hospital bill that's outstanding. We really don't hold that against them, but if it's a bunch of Verizon bills and power bills and water bills, it means they can't even get it into their own name because the deposit's so high. Then we don't even bother renting to them. And then any sex offender or felon or anything like that. We've done some felons actually, but they were just like DUIs. It wasn't anything violent. It wasn't anything sexual. It wasn't anything crazy. They just like to drink and drive a lot. So,
that happens in Wilmington.
Yeah, it happens a lot. You're in the norm if you have a DUI.
Yeah, I think Wilmington is it the highest per capita in the country?
I think so. I don't know in the country, but it's definitely up there. I mean, there's a lot of people that drink and drive here.
Yeah, I feel like that was in the news when we were like just graduating college. Like Wilmington wins like top 5.
I was gonna ask how Jim had so much information on this, but I guess
never had a DUI.
I guess we'll stick with
it was on Facebook.
The news article that he read when he was graduating.
Yeah, that's funny.
No, that's awesome. So Tom, what are your future goals and focus? Are you going to continue building your single family portfolio, or what does that look like?
Man, that was the plan until like a week ago. We bought 5 single families, and I was starting to renovate them, the usual plan to go and rent them. And then I got a call like a few nights ago at like 11 o'clock at night. It was really weird, from an agent. And she's like, hey, I have a client that just fell out of contract like an hour ago, and they're going to rent buy a unit across the street from your house. And I saw your house, and I walked over there because it was vacant, and my electrician was working there late, and she asked for my number, and she called me at that time. And I was like, hey, do you want to sell your house? I was like, no, man, I just bought it. I'm about to rent it to, I think it was actually to Section 8. It was just a home run house. I mean, it was, dirty, and we just cleaned it up, and it was going to be a $1350 all day forever. And she's like, well, look, what did you buy it for? And I said, $62,000. And she's like, all right, well, we had put that other house across the street under contract for $145, so we'll offer you the same thing. I said, all right. I'll call Section 8 in the morning and tell them that it's under contract. So I have it under contract right now for $145,000.
Man, so this will be your first flip.
It will be my first completely accidental, unintentional flip.
Yeah,
and my lender's going to be pissed too, because it's only like a $50,000 loan that it took like a month to close, and now it's going to be settled next month. And we are not going to 1031 it. We're just going to take the cash and then buy another like 6.
Yeah, that never happens to me. I always get somebody that comes over and asks the electrician for my phone number, and it's always because they want to rent it. Nobody's ever like, yeah, I want to buy it.
Yeah, no, that always happens to me as well. Or when I'm just like there looking at it, they'll just like walk in the door and say, is it for rent? And I'm like, yeah, call Section 8. They'll tell you all about it. But yeah, that's where it kind of the light bulb moment happened, because then she was like, oh, and her friend the buyer's friend wants to move here as well. Do you have anything else? And I was like, yeah.
At 145, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So she put something else under contract yesterday for 139, and I bought it for 55. So like that's kind of where now that's like 10 years worth of rent, cash flow. So yeah. I said to her, as long as you're able to find the buyers, and these are just 3% deals, just 3% on her end. And after I give her 3 or 4, I'm going to knock it down to 2.5, just buyer's commission. And she finds the buyer, I'll give her the inventory, because Wilmington, Jacksonville, anywhere around here, just the inventory for low-income houses is so limited. Right. If you go right now and you go look at under 100,000 in Wilmington, you're not going to find much. You might find my house for 149 under contract, or 145 contract. But Actually, no, because it was never on MLS. It never got listed, so it's not going to be on there. But until it closes. But yeah, that's just what we did.
So are you good, like in the future, are you looking to like sell some of your portfolio to some of these, home buyers, or what are you doing? Are you going to keep growing your single family portfolio? What does it look like?
Yeah, I would say I want to get to 500 units and then just sell out to a hedge fund. So a couple of different agents that I work with also have relationships with hedge funds that would want to buy subsidized housing, and I would probably just sell out to them.
I like it. And then what? Retire on a beach, or
Yeah, or a mountain, probably.
you don't want to go in the commercial?
No, I mean, once I get 500 units, I'll have seen enough about everything. 500 units times average probably $80,000 a unit,
Yeah.
purchase price.
That's a good payday.
I'll be happy with. Yeah.
That's a good number.
And really the main goal is with the flips, we're either going to take all that cash and just pay down our loans off with all that extra cash flow, or we're just going to improve and upgrade and just increase the value of the overall portfolio. We're talking to some different companies that do siding, and they have big crews, and we want to side like 40 or 50 houses at a time. Because that makes the biggest increase in overall value is, vinyl siding. Because a lot of these have original like 90-year-old, wood shale siding, and it just looks terrible. So we want to do that.
Do you guys have a company called All Sides in Wilmington?
I haven't, not that I've heard of.
You should look them up. It's ALSIDES, but they do a lot of the subcontracting work, and they actually supply the siding. And I mean, they do, for like most of the siding and windows and doors companies, they are the ones that actually do the work. And then if you got 40 or 50 houses you want sided, you might be able to get it significantly cheaper than a, quote unquote siding company.
Yeah, no, that's what we're looking for, especially if we can work in financing and doing the whole portfolio, because a lot of them, we wouldn't need it for all of them because a lot of them have vinyl siding, but I would say probably at least half we would be able to work out. And if we threw 100 houses to a siding company, it'd probably get a pretty good deal and just buy it all in bulk. Yeah.
Not that you haven't given a plethora of advice, but do you have any advice you give to an investor that just wants to get started right now?
Man, I would just say, because I speak to those people all the time. Like I go to a lot of the real estate investor association meetups locally, and that's probably like the question that I get the most. For what I did, the way I learned is just to do it. Just go buy something. It's going to be very difficult for you to ruin yourself financially by buying a $70,000 house, and renting it out. Worst comes to worst, you're always going to be able to rent it for your mortgage unless you just completely, I don't even know how you would screw that up actually. But buying one house, you would learn more from that one purchase than going to all the seminars and workshops and meetups and bigger pocket, forum reading and all the courses and stuff that you can buy. I've never bought one of those. The only thing that I've done was just buy real estate. You're going to talk to all the agents, all the brokers, all the lenders, appraisers, inspectors, contractors, and you'll figure it out on the way. So, put together your 12 grand and go buy a $70,000 house. And if you can do it once, you can do it 258 times, 259 times.
No, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. You don't really learn anything until you buy one and screw up a few things.
Yeah, exactly. And I have done that. I have bought some houses where they just won't rent. They're just an unrentable house to the point where now what I've done is just given them to my contractors because they'll either have crackheads that break in every other night or it'll be on a very, very bad like drug alley. Because I have bought some houses like that. But the vast majority of what we're buying are in, decent neighborhoods that are transitional. They're up and coming. They're being near the main downtown scene. So everything is kind of growing around it. Right now, I'm doing a lot of buying around northern part of downtown because they're building a Live Nation amphitheater with 10,000 people. And that's going to open next year. And the first act, I think, is going to be like Dave Chappelle. So wow. I already have 4 houses that I just bought that is a block from it. So I'm just going to Airbnb those. And they started licensing and regulating Airbnb here. So now I'm trying to get as many Airbnb licenses as I can because it sticks with the house. So you get one to a house that I can only imagine what it's going to do to the value of it.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible.
That's a damn good strategy, man.
So,
all right. You ready for the rapid fire rounds? You got 30 seconds to answer each one.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. What's your favorite way to source deals?
Off market with my agent. My agent just focuses on looking for deals for me and bringing them to me.
Full time, just one agent focuses on Tom Cruz?
No, he's not 100% for me, but I'm probably his biggest client. So yeah, all he does is when he hears about something, I'm the first one he lets know, and I'm the first shot at it.
Awesome. What motivates you
No, wow, that's very open-ended.
Yeah.
What motivates me? Financial freedom and not having to answer to anybody.
Perfect. What's your favorite type of property?
Single family.
Single family? And we have the exact description of it. What are 2 mistakes you'd avoid if you started over today?
Not buying condos and partnering with high net worth individuals sooner.
I love it. Crushed it, man.
That was awesome.
Yeah, 5 stars. So much gold in there. Are you open with sharing some of like your lease terms that you throw in there? Or do you want to keep that? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing. I mean, there's enough properties here. So I only own 6% of the total downtown market. So I still have 94% to buy.
Oh, let's go.
So there's a ton
Let's go.
Yeah.
Tell us about some lease terms that you have that are unique to you and not what most of the market uses.
Yeah, so a lot of people will default to the 1-year length for the lease term. Turnover is by far and away the thing that's going to crush your cash flow the fastest, especially if you have someone that trashes your unit. So we force minimum 2-year leases for everybody. It doesn't matter what their situation is. And again, I hate to disclaim this every single time, but it just depends on the market here, especially after that hurricane about 7 months ago. It's tough to find housing. So you can dictate whatever terms you want. So that's one, 2-year lease terms. And we'll give a discount if they do a 3 or 4-year lease terms. We have some tenants on a 5-year lease. And we have just built in, rent increases. We have a $300 maintenance cap, meaning if there's any issue under $300, the tenant's paying for it. Air filters, light bulbs, if they clog a sink or a toilet, or if the heating and air goes out and it's a result of negligence with the air filter not being replaced, it's on them. If they kick a hole in the wall or, cabinet or rips off, it's on them. So that really just leads us down to all the big stuff, which then is covered by warranty. So our CapEx and our maintenance is really reduced because we have it covered, one way or another. Outside of that, we are only debit and credit card only. We don't do money order cash checks. We tell them that up front. If you don't have a bank account or you can't get a Walmart prepaid Visa gift card every single month to load it up, just don't even bother. We don't, we don't chase payments. For the most part, it's all automated with email and text notifications. On the first day of every month, they get a text saying, "Hey, are you ready to pay your rent? If yes, reply with yes," and then it just charges their account automatically.
What happens at 11:59 on the first of the month?
I would say that about 15% of them will pay. Yeah, it doesn't go out. It goes out at 8 a.m. on the first. And what happens is, we might pick up 15 or 20 grand in the first, hour. And then the rest of it waits until 5 or 6 p.m. after work. And then we're collecting up until like the 15th. We usually evict on the 11th because you have to give them a 10-day notice. So if they don't pay by the 1st, then they automatically get that the eviction notice, their 10-day eviction notice. And then we're filing on the 11th, and then they're out by the 27th, 28th.
So just to clarify, at the end of the first of the month, at the end of the day or at the end of the night, you send a eviction notice so that 10-day period starts?
At the end, yeah. At the end of the last, I think it goes out at like 11 o'clock at night, saying, "Hey, look, we didn't receive your payment today. This is just your notice that you're going to be evicted in 10 days." Because then you already get that out of the way, and then they're out. And most of the time, that's enough of a kind of a kick for them to pay. A lot of them are just going to wait until we give them a 5-day grace period like everybody else until the 5th, but they're getting automatic. I mean, we're right up there with the max you can do under fair
housing
debt collection practices. Yeah. Not fair housing, fair debt collection, because that's what we're doing is collecting a debt. So we adhere to all that. But yeah, I mean, it's once per day, text and email, following up with that.
Is there anything you do to like tenant proof the property before they move in?
Yeah, so with Section 8, what we do is with a lot of our units, we take down all ceiling fans. We don't have ceiling fans in any of our units, even the nice ones. That's just the first thing that gets ripped down. First thing, the blades break, they never clean it, they sag, and once they break, if it's in the unit, then guess what? You have to replace it, especially with Section 8. You can't just remove it and put a light bulb up there or a dome light. You have to replace it with what was there before. So at least with the department, the local housing here, that's what they enforce. We get rid of storm doors. Kids love to hang on storm doors and jump. Those things crack and break. All of those arms, hydraulic arms, always break. We get rid of those. We leave like a 6-pack of air filters in the closet, let them know that it's there, replace it. We're starting to do subscriptions now for air filters and just letting them, do it that way. That way they have no reason not to. It costs us like $20 a unit. We rip out dishwashers and garbage disposals. We do not provide anything.
Really?
Also, yeah, those both break all the time. It's an amenity. It's at the end of the day, low income housing. It's gonna be the bare minimum that's gonna be, clean and safe to live in. But they just throw everything down that disposal, and inevitably it's going to lead to a $100 service call and a new $150 disposal.
Now, I just built a new house, new construction for a rental specifically, and I didn't put a garbage disposal in, and the plumber's like, wait a minute, you're not putting a garbage disposal in? And I'm like, no, man, this is for a rental. There's no amenities like that.
Yeah, we don't do washers and dryers unless they want to rent it. We rent washers and dryers for $10 each per month if they want to do that. And then we also have we have to provide fridge and stove, which I wouldn't if I didn't have to, but it's just a bare minimum. So we do provide that. We have really good relationships with used appliance vendors locally, where we're paying $150 for a fridge, $110, $120 for a stove. Oh, non-smoking. A lot of them, like to smoke in the units. We just tell them up front it's $1,000, smoking fee. If you smoke in it, we're just going to charge you the $1,000. That's where the advantage of having a credit card on file at the end. There's really no question. We have them sign initial next to that, so they understand that there's no smoking smell when they got there. And that's for the most part the big stuff that we enforce.
No, those are amazing.
You mentioned earlier the text that you send out as far as prompting them for a payment on the first.
Yeah.
Is that a proprietary software, or is that something that anybody can use? What is that?
Yeah, so I did have it custom built. We use a software called WHMCS, which is Web Host Manager Complete Solution. It's actually designed as a billing and support ticket platform for the web hosting industry, which I come from originally when I was doing marketing. So we just modified it for property management. Because, at the end of the day, you put clients in there, you have, the products are the addresses, and then it connects with authorized.net, which does our payment processing. And then with the text messages, I had my developer create a API integration with Twilio, and then pretty much Twilio sends out the text. They respond to it. It posts back to our platform, and then it triggers the capture event inside of authorized.net, and then it sends everybody receipts and invoices.
So for non-techies out there, he's got a somewhat custom software setup where he sends a text message automatically to residents, letting them know, hey, do you want to pay? And if they don't pay by the end of the day, he sends an electronic alert or eviction notice, right? At the end of the day.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's well done.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And can you talk a little bit about the $300 maintenance cap? If they've got like a plumbing leak or an electrical issue and they get their buddy down their street or their cousin to fix it, is that okay? Or do you require them to get licensed contractors, or what does that look like?
Yeah, anything that could turn out to be a much bigger issue, if their outlet's not working and it could have just been a short, or they, were running a really high amperage, device. We've had people trying to cut stuff and they were using like table saws inside, and they'll use the outlets and then it blows the whole thing. Then we'll force them to pay it. And we'll still, we have a full-time contractor on staff that'll go out there and check it out and see what happened. If the whole outlet's all burnt up, hey man, you got to pay for a new outlet here. But a lot of the houses are super old, 100-year-old houses with some of them still have the original knob and tube electrical, that just never got upgraded. So in which case, then we're going to step in and help them. It's just the stuff that is going to be very clearly negligent. If they have a toilet that got clogged that wasn't clogged when they move in, guess what? They're paying for it. If they flood it, there's tenant insurance that we also require them to have. We haven't really ran into that. The people have to live there. It's very rare they're going to have someone go in there that doesn't know what they're doing, or even if they're not licensed, for the most part, they'll ask us, hey, my cousin wants to come and help and fix it. We'll just ask them if they've done that before and, kind of get a sense of it. But for the most part, it works pretty well. It's mostly as a deterrent, because then they know that if their kid's hanging on the cabinet, they're going to be paying for a new cabinet door or a whole new $100 cabinet. And that, for the most part, works pretty well.
I love it. What's your go-to for renovate or tenant proofing a property that you buy that was, a mill house built anywhere from 1900 to 1950s? What do you do? Paint, carpet, obviously take out the dishwasher. What are some of the stuff you do when you first buy a property to get it ready to rent out?
Yeah, so flooring is the biggest thing as far as cosmetic and getting it to pass inspection. If it's got nasty carpet, that's the first thing we do is pull it all up. And then we're putting vinyl plank down. We buy it at 90 cents a square foot. Then my guy installs it for $1 a square foot. So call it $2 all in. $2 installed and, average 900 square feet of that. So we're a couple $1,000 in. And then appliances, if they're broken, we'll replace them. And then paint, we're paying $100 a room to paint. So that's the big stuff that we do interiors.
Yeah, vinyl plank, I think, is the most underrated material out there in the housing industry at this point. I mean, I think if people knew what it was all about and how indestructible it was, it would be in a lot more even high-end homes.
Yeah, it is, especially when a lot of people cheap out and put laminate down. And the first time they spill water or their dog has an accident on the floor, it just bubbles up, it gets disgusting, and you have to redo the whole thing. So, it's really important to spend the extra money and put vinyl in because it really is indestructible. I mean, we haven't seen even the worst tenants, put a scratch in it for the most part.
Yeah, it's like mop it and get it ready for the next tenant.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. That's and awesome. Then we also we put semi-gloss on the walls. We don't do satin or eggshell or anything.
Yeah.
Looks like an elementary school wall, but it works really well. You can just wipe it down and, keep it moving. We do it all light gray. We actually, I don't know if you can see in my house. It's called Sonic Silver. It's a really light gray, and then we do a semi-gloss trim. So we just found that, and it seems to work really well.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. I mean, you can cut down at least probably one paint job using that semi-gloss as far as a move-in, move-out.
Yeah, no, you can. And also just it looks better for a lot longer, so that's the way we go with it.
Do you guys put down any carpet like in the bedrooms, or is it all vinyl plank?
It's all vinyl plank. We don't do any carpet anymore. It's just people sometimes prefer it, especially in the winter when it's cold, but it's just not something we even consider.
Yeah.
Because the first time they put a dog in it, it just could destroy it.
Oh yeah, it gets destroyed. And then my last question for you, man, is jumping back to you partnering with other people who have, some capacity in getting conventional loans. You're putting the loan in their name. Are you deeding the property over into like an LLC that you create between them to like legally hold it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so right after we put it under contract and they get the loan process started, I'll have my attorney prepare a quick claim deed, and then we both sign it into that LLC. And then it closes under their name, and then we immediately record the quick claim deed after that as well. So that way it's both in our name, we own 50-50 of it, and we can, not have to worry about it being his property until, Yeah.
I love it, man. That's awesome.
That's just the way we handle that.
All right, man. This is all we got. This has been awesome, man. You crushed it. There's a ton of value in here. So I appreciate you taking the time to share some of your gold nuggets.
No problem.
It was very nice meeting you over the Skype
nice
machine.
Nice meeting you too.
Yeah.
The Skype machine.
All right. Later.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye.